Disclaimer. Tonight's story is based on a disturbing account from a former crime scene cleaner. Names, locations, and identifying details have been changed. But the detail that made the story spread was always the same. After a family was murdered inside a quiet suburban home, the killer left one instruction written in blood. Do not clean the mirror. I cleaned death for a living. Not metaphorically. I mean blood from hardwood floors, handprints from walls, things families should never have to see. Most crime scenes were terrible, but they made sense. Someone died. Police investigated. My team came in after. That was the job. Until the night I was sent to a house where an entire family had been murdered. And the killer had left instructions for the person who would clean it. At first, I thought it was a sick joke. Then the blood started coming back after I wiped it away. The mirrors fogged from the inside. And by 3:17 a.m., I realized the killer hadn't left the house. He had only left his body. Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. If you enjoy dark crime scene horror, psychological fear, ritual stories, and disturbing cases that slowly turn into something much worse, hit like, subscribe, and stay until the end. Because this story starts with a murder house, but it ends with something that should never have been reflected in a mirror. Now let's get into tonight's story. I used to believe every house had a memory. Not in a supernatural way. I just mean houses hold on to things. Cigarette smoke in curtains, old arguments in thin walls, children's laughter in bedrooms after the children grow up and leave. And sometimes, blood in places no mop can reach. My name is Aaron Miles. I spent 7 years working as a crime scene cleaner in Ohio. People think it's like the movies. Yellow tape, flashing lights, detectives standing around while you walk into the middle of a fresh nightmare. It isn't like that. By the time we arrive, the police are gone. The body is gone. The questions are gone. What remains is silence. And the silence is always worse. The job came in just after midnight on a Tuesday in November. The address was in a quiet suburb outside Columbus. Nice lawns, 2-car garages, porch lights on timers. The kind of neighborhood where people left Halloween decorations up too long and pretended nothing bad ever happened behind closed doors. My supervisor called it a family scene. That was the phrase he used when he didn't want to say the real words. Family murder. 3 victims. Mother, father, teenage son. Police had already cleared the property. The house was released to the insurance company. We were supposed to start with the living room and kitchen, then move upstairs after sunrise. Usually, I worked with a team. That night, I was alone. One guy had the flu, another had car trouble. My supervisor asked if I could begin the first pass by myself until backup arrived in the morning. I should have said no, but I needed the hours. So at 1:06 a.m., I parked my van in front of a pale gray suburban house with black shutters, a white porch, and a wreath still hanging on the door. There were no police cars, no neighbors outside, just my van, the cold wind, and the house waiting with every window dark. Inside, the air smelled like bleach, copper, and old heat. The police had left the entry lights on. Yellow bulbs made the hallway look sick. Plastic sheeting covered part of the living room floor, but dark stains had reached beyond it, spreading between the seams of the hardwood. I stood in the doorway for a moment with my respirator in my hand. Even after 7 years, there were houses that made me hesitate. This was one of them. Not because of the blood, because of how arranged everything felt. The couch had been moved exactly 3 feet from the wall. The dining chairs were turned backward. Every family photo in the hallway had been tilted slightly to the left. And above the fireplace, the large rectangular mirror was covered in dried blood. Not splatter. Writing. 4 words, written carefully across the glass. Do not clean the mirror. I stared at it for a long time. Then I laughed once, because sometimes fear comes out of people in stupid ways. Real original, I muttered. Killers left messages sometimes, usually for police, sometimes for families, sometimes because they wanted to feel bigger than what they were. But this felt different. It wasn't a confession, it was an instruction. I took photos for documentation, logged the mirror as a contaminated surface, and started with the floor. That was the procedure. Work from the cleanest area toward the worst. Bag porous materials, cut out contaminated carpet, scrub hard surfaces. Repeat until the room stops looking like what happened there. For the first hour, nothing happened. I moved furniture, sprayed enzyme cleaner, bagged pillows, scraped dried blood from under the coffee table. The house creaked now and then, but old houses do that when the heat kicks on. At 2:11 a.m., I heard a knock from upstairs. 3 quick taps. I froze with my hand inside a biohazard bag. I listened. Nothing. Hello? My voice sounded small inside the mask. No answer. I told myself it was pipes. Then it came again. Tap, tap, tap. From directly above me. The master bedroom. I radioed my supervisor. No response. Cell service was weak inside the house, so I stepped onto the porch and called him. Voicemail. When I went back inside, the living room smelled different. Less like bleach, more like smoke, not cigarette smoke, candle smoke. I checked the kitchen first. On the island, police had left evidence tape around a set of deep knife marks in the wood. Beside them was a drying pool of blood I hadn't cleaned yet. Except now the blood had changed. It had spread into a thin line. Across the counter, down the cabinet, onto the floor, like someone had dragged one wet finger through it. The line led into the hallway, toward the mirror. I stood there, staring. Then the radio on my belt crackled. Static hissed. A voice came through. Not my supervisor. A man's voice. Low, calm, almost polite. You started in the wrong room. I ripped the radio off my belt and dropped it. It hit the floor and went silent. For a few seconds, I couldn't move. Then I did what people always think they'll never do in horror stories. I stayed. Because leaving would mean explaining why I abandoned an active job. Leaving would mean admitting I heard a dead man on a radio. Leaving would mean accepting that something inside that house knew I was there. So I put the radio in my bag, grabbed my flashlight, and went upstairs. The staircase was narrow. Family photos lined the wall. A smiling mother, a father in a baseball cap, a teenage boy holding a fishing rod. Every photo was tilted left. At the top of the stairs, the hallway was dark. The master bedroom door was open. Inside, the bed had been stripped by investigators. The mattress was gone. Blue evidence tape marked places on the floor and wall. But what caught my eye was the closet. The door was closed. From inside came 3 taps. Tap, tap, tap. I raised the flashlight. Police already cleared this house, I whispered, like saying it out loud would make it true. Then I opened the closet. Empty. No person, no animal, no broken pipe. Just hanging clothes, a shoe rack, and a smell like wet ashes. Then my flashlight caught something on the inside of the closet door. More writing, not in blood this time, scratched into the wood. He watches from glass. My stomach tightened. I backed out of the room and started downstairs. Halfway down, I looked at the family photos again. They were no longer tilted left. Every frame was straight, except one. The teenage boy's photo had been turned completely around. The back of the frame faced outward, and written on it in dark red was, "You missed one." That was when I finally called 911. At least I tried. My phone had no signal, not weak signal, no signal. I went to the front door. It wouldn't open. The deadbolt was unlocked. The chain was off. The knob turned in my hand, but the door held like someone on the other side was pushing it shut. I slammed my shoulder into it. Once, twice, nothing. Then behind me, in the living room, I heard a wet, dragging sound. Slow, heavy, across the hardwood floor. I turned. The mirror above the fireplace was no longer covered only with the first message. New words were appearing under it, not written by a hand. The blood was sliding across the glass by itself, forming letters. Clean everything else first. I don't know why that sentence scared me more than the first one. Maybe because it sounded procedural, like whoever wrote it understood my job, like this had been planned for me. I backed away from the mirror and forced myself to breathe. I decided to ignore it. That was my mistake. I went back into the kitchen and began cleaning faster. I scrubbed the counter, bagged towels, sprayed the cabinet doors until bleach burned through my respirator. Every few minutes, I heard movement upstairs. A step, a knock, the soft creak of someone shifting weight in an empty room. But I did not look. At 3:17 a.m., the power went out. The house dropped into total darkness. My flashlight flickered twice and died. Then the mirror in the living room began glowing. Not bright, just enough. A faint gray light, like moonlight underwater. I walked toward it, even though every part of me wanted to run. The blood on the mirror had thinned, becoming almost transparent. And behind my reflection, I saw the family. The mother stood near the couch. The father stood by the hallway. The teenage boy stood at the base of the stairs. They were pale. Still. Their mouths hung open as if they were trying to speak. But their eyes weren't looking at me. They were looking behind me. I turned around. The room was empty. When I faced the mirror again, a fourth figure had appeared. A man I didn't recognize. Tall, thin, bald, wearing a clean white shirt, buttoned all the way to the neck. He stood behind the family, smiling. His reflection leaned close to my ear. But in the real room, no one was there. Then the man in the mirror whispered, "Now you can clean it." I stumbled backward and tripped over a bucket. The lights came back on. The mirror was black, not dark. Black like the glass had filled with ink. I ran to the garage door, locked. Back door, locked. Windows wouldn't break. I hit the kitchen window with a metal pry bar until my arms hurt. The glass didn't even crack. Then the radio crackled again from inside my bag. The same man's voice said, "You missed the boy." I looked toward the stairs. The teenage boy's bedroom was the only room I hadn't checked. I didn't want to go up there. I had no choice. His room was at the end of the hall. Basketball posters, a desk, a gaming chair, a shelf of model cars. It looked painfully normal. On the bed sat a black trash bag, one of mine, tied neatly. I hadn't put it there. Inside was every bloody rag, glove, and towel I had already cleaned and bagged from downstairs. But they were dry now, spotless. Except for one item, a boy's baseball jersey, white with navy sleeves, soaked in blood. I hadn't seen it before. Behind me, the closet door opened. A teenage boy stepped out. Not alive, not fully dead. His skin was gray, his neck bent wrong. His eyes were wide with terror. He raised one shaking hand and pointed behind me. I couldn't turn. The air beside my ear warmed. The bald man's voice whispered. He hid under the bed. I had to wait. I dropped to the floor and rolled sideways just as something slammed into the wall where my head had been. A handprint appeared in blood. Large, fresh. I crawled backward until my spine hit the bed. The boy stood between me and the door now, crying without sound. Then he pointed to the mirror over his dresser. Small, rectangular, cracked at one corner. In its reflection, the bald man stood directly behind me. He held a long kitchen knife. I grabbed the baseball jersey and threw it over the mirror. The bedroom exploded with noise. Every drawer flew open. The posters ripped from the walls. The boy vanished. And from downstairs, the large mirror above the fireplace cracked. One long fracture split the glass. The house screamed. Not wood, not pipes. The house. I ran. Downstairs, the living room mirror was leaking black liquid onto the fireplace mantel. The words were gone now. The glass pulsed like something breathing behind it. I remembered the first instruction. Do not clean the mirror. And suddenly, I understood. It wasn't a warning to protect me. It was a rule to protect him. The killer had used the mirror to stay. The blood wasn't evidence. It was a seal. And I had almost preserved it. I grabbed the strongest chemical from my kit and poured it directly onto the glass. The reaction was instant. The mirror shrieked. The black surface boiled. The frame shook. Every photo in the house fell from the walls. In the reflection, the bald man slammed both hands against the glass from the other side. For the first time, he wasn't smiling. I scrubbed, harder than I had ever scrubbed anything. The blood came away in thick black strips. The man in the reflection began to burn. His mouth opened wider than any human mouth should. Behind him, the family watched. The mother, the father, the boy. Then the boy raised his hand and waved. The mirror shattered inward, not outward. Inward, like the glass had collapsed into a hole. A blast of freezing air knocked me across the room. When I opened my eyes, the house was quiet. The front door stood open. Morning light spilled into the hallway. My backup team found me sitting on the porch at 6:42 a.m., covered in black residue, holding a broken mirror shard in my hand. Police came back. They found no bald man, no unexplained fingerprints, no black liquid, no proof of anything I told them. But upstairs, in the teenage boy's room, they did find the bloody jersey under the bed. It had been missed during the first investigation. There was DNA on it, not the family's. 3 weeks later, they matched it to a man named Leonard Voss, a drifter with a history of break-ins, stalking, and ritual fixation. Police believed he had killed the family and fled. They never found him. Officially, he was still alive. But I know that's not true. Because after that night, I quit crime scene cleaning. I moved 2 states away, changed my number, stopped taking jobs that involved houses, blood, or mirrors. For almost a year, nothing happened. Then one morning, I was brushing my teeth in my new apartment. The bathroom mirror fogged from the inside, and 4 words appeared slowly in the glass. Not written backward, written for me. You missed one more,